Welcome back to Gardening with Tom and Gayle. We've been talking about a lot of different subjects, but we are focused right now on the joy of having shade during the heat of the summer. And there are some of the really nice, fast-growing shade trees, some of the gorgeous perennials that can give you delightful beauty and texture right there in that shade year after year. But I think we're kind of overlooking the fact that there's an awful lot of annual flowers that really add sparkle, that work so well. People forget the fact that even though we have an abundance of heat and abundance of sun, that there's a huge portion of the United States east of the Mississippi that's absolutely covered by trees. You can't see a thing. They're covered by trees. And so, of course, those people have lots and lots of shade, and so they don't think in planting in terms of petunias or geraniums. They embraced all of the annual beauty that works so well in the shady spots, and we can take advantage of that expertise right here.
Well, I can't believe the coleus has been very, very popular this year for a good reason.
Some
of the leaf styles are amazing.
And textures, and it's just astounding.
And then there's good old impatiens, which if you're lucky if you have the shady sort of area where impatiens can grow, because they're just such an easy plant to do as far as maintenance. And the variety of colors that they come in is very wide.
Again, because they're so widely used in the East, that's exactly one of the reasons why coleus has gotten to be such, there are just such a wide array of different tones in the leaves, different shapes of the leaf, different sizes, little tiny ones up to the great big King Kong series. But the same thing goes for impatiens. They keep working and working and working, and so we have beautiful burgundies, bright whites, stunning oranges and reds. So you can have just the same colors you have out with petunias, but this is for shade. And it's not just the fact that impatiens are just one thing.
Well, there is the New Guinea impatiens as well, which has tends to have a more upright look to it, a little stiffer, I guess, than the other impatiens.
Nice bush in there,
and the flowers
formed by the summer
tend to be a little bit larger, come in some really neat colors as far as intensity. And there actually is a type of New Guinea impatiens which will work in the sunshine as well. So that one's a little bit, can be a little bit confusing, but it's very adaptable, I guess.
Yeah, it's just the fact that there is so much shade back east that we are able to enjoy some of the changes and some of the developments. And so, again, the impatiens are probably one of the widest range of colors and styles and shapes that is available. But gold begonias are still one of the mainstays.
Really, there are so many types of begonias. I think they've got the impatiens beat as far as variety.
That's right. There are... The tuberous varieties have been noted for years because they have great, big, beautiful, almost tennis ball-sized flowers of just delightful pinks and whites, oranges, yellows. But they are a little bit more demanding in their attention. But good old fibrous begonias seem to work so nicely. And, of course, there's other begonias types, too.
Well, there are some... I don't know if they're actually considered a Rex, but there's one that we have that's called Griffin. That's really an interesting begonia, I think. It has a leaf that looks very much like a Rex. It's kind of modelly looking.
And the Dragonwing series are just really beautiful big flowers, but have like the New Guinea impatiens, are more upright in their stance, and so they actually get to be a nice centerpiece for many of the planters, or actually an accent in any plant bed because of their increase in height. And of course the the fibrous begonias that have dark leaves can handle the full sun just as easy as they handle the shade. And so if you have a situation where you want begonias that blooming abundantly for the morning in the shade, but then still handle the heat, then these dark leaf begonias will certainly fit the bill for that.
And then there's a little plant called a polka dot plant, or freckle face we used to call it. It's got little spots on the foliage that are either pink or red or white, set off by a dark green leaf. So those are pretty, and they work very well in the shade.
They add such interest and sparkle in any type of shade area because of their unique appearance. And of course, for those people who really like more of a challenge, but they're beautiful flowers. The fuchsias also are really something to enjoy, but the fuchsias have such big flowers that they are more subject to wind damage than anything else around here. But with reasonable care, they can just absolutely be the centerpiece of any shade garden.
Well, I've had people talk about how they always hang a fuchsia hanging basket under a tree, literally hanging from a branch of a tree. And it works very well because it has shade out there, a little bit of protection.
And, of course, we shouldn't overlook the good old ivy geraniums. They have been around for a long, long time. And they come in a wide array of different flowers, shapes, and sizes. So there are lots of different kinds of things that we can have in the shade that really give a lot of color. And I think we ought to really back up and talk about it again. If it's flowering, it's going to be needing to be fed on a regular basis because those flowers really pull a lot of energy away from the plant. So if you want good flowering, whether it's in the sun or whether it's in the shade, it's really important to back it up with some extra care and give it some extra food. Whether it's granular food, whether it's time-release food, whether it's liquid food, feeding on a regular basis is really critical for all flower production.
And remember, don't get kind of caught off guard by having your hanging baskets on a watering schedule and then the temperature changes and your baskets run dry. So be aware that you may have to change your watering schedule either a little bit longer or more frequently in higher temperatures.
Or literally just a pan of water out from the house will make all the difference in one hot afternoon that happens to be windy. So again, it's just food, water, and attention. Love your plant and they'll love you back. Well, Gail, we want to just briefly touch about some of the different things people are always thinking about putting in a living fence, a living hedge. And so arborvitae, of course, have been used very, very successful. But there are two types of arborvitae. One is called emerald green that grows a little bit slower and is a lot denser and has a deeper green than the old style that's called pyramidal. But the pyramidal grew fast. And so if you want a fast-growing one that literally has the potential to grow 1.5 to 2 feet a year, then the pyramidal is one of the options that you can really have a nice fast windbreak or visual screen very quickly. And there are a lot of other things that give you that same type of appearance besides arborvitae.
Well, I like junipers. They do tend to be quite a bit wider than an arborvitae, which is good because you can space them on a wider center, but they also come out the other direction wider too. So you have to have plenty of room for them or be willing to clip to make sure that you've got it staying in its spot. But junipers are very tolerant of slightly drier conditions once you get them established. And there is a gray tone that's very nice, I think, for a neutral backdrop.
Yep, and another variety that's called Skyrocket that has a more green tone. And the irony is that the Skyrocket really isn't that much faster growing than the Moonglow as far as its speed, but they both have a distinct characteristic and have some really nice features that would be an option to arborvitae. And of course, one that's gaining a lot of popularity is the Leland cypress, another one that basically is pyramidal instead of columnar. But this is a real soft, beautiful, deep green. And there's another type of evergreen that will give you a lot of joy as far as a good hedge. So consider that too.
And if you're limited in space as far as narrowness particularly, the Irish yew is a good choice because it tends to have a very columnar, narrow look to it. And it actually is one of the few that will do very well in shade as well. So if you have a shady spot where you want to put some, like a living fence, Irish yew is a good one to consider.
Now, I want to go back and touch on a subject that came up with a question last week, and that was the fact that whether it's an arborvitae, whether it's a tree, or whether it's a shrub, they do not share. And so if one side is getting food and water and the other side is not, one side is going to look like death warmed over and the other side is going to look delightful. So when you're out there giving your hedge or your tree or your bush fertilizer or water or anything else, understand that it needs to be on all sides more or less equally because the plant cannot share. So simply because one half of that bush is getting water, the other half cannot take access to it. So really understand that you have to be equal in your approach. So if you're feeding your arborvitaes, remember to get the backside as well as the front side, and you'll have a lot healthier plant and a lot better appearance.
Well, we should talk about some of the pretty things that are out there. The perennial hibiscus the buds are getting larger.
That's right. And there
Very
are so many other
blooming.
things that are really flowering right now. Almost all of the beautiful perennial daisies are really starting to take off and bloom beautifully. We just talked about all the beautiful type of shade perennials, whether it's hosta or stobie or ferns, and they are available too, and really add a great deal of joy to any shade garden. But there's so many sun-loving things.
Lots of daisies. The helianthemum, that's kind of a sunflowery type thing.
The gaura that I love so much is starting to show, and of course the garden fox is starting to be really show with lots of flowers. And it's another one that blooms all summer long. So there are a lot of flowers that bloom in the spring, some of the perennial flowers that bloom in the summer, and of course we look forward to mums that are perennial that bloom in the fall. But it's kind of nice to also have the consistency of gorgeous color out there. So whether there happens to be a gaura or sundrops or literally some of the beautiful salvias, there's just a lot of perennial flowers that give you joy all summer long.
And then people are really into putting together their flower beds or containers particularly, and we just have a really wide assortment of flowers or baskets.
They feel late putting together their flowering containers, but it's not late at all. This is just the first part of June. We have the full summer all the way to October to enjoy. So there's just so many different options. We were talking about the beautiful little flowers that the hummingbird was liking, the calibrachoa or the millionbells. But they look just like the petunias that are not related to them, but look just very, very similar.
Well, we've got something called mini-tunia, I believe is the term. There are a lot of different cutesy terms for them, but they are a tiny petunia. Many of them have a very compact way of growing, but they'll still cascade over a basket, if that makes any sense. But they really are nice, easy maintenance plants, I think.
And, of course, the traditional things like geraniums, marigolds. Mm-hmm. But perhaps you like to have a real walk on the wild side and a celosia. And so there are lots and lots of different type of beautiful annual flowers that really add so much consistent joy all summer long. But still nothing beats the absolute diversity of color and style compared to petunias. All the decorator, the designer petunias have just really revolutionized gardening, I think. Not just the traditional white and pink and purple.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week, I guess. Early. That went very quickly.
I appreciate you guys listening. If you would like to stop by, we're at the Flower Farm in Columbia Center Boulevard. So take time to stop on by. Otherwise, I have to say goodbye for right now.
Good morning. This is Lance Kenmore with the Kenmore team, and I'd like to welcome